calling on the people of Scotland to vote no on this referendum. This is not a referendum about independence. Independence, dear friends, is not on the table. They're offering you localism. They're offering you particularism. They're offering you the equivalent of a Bantustan, the Royal Scottish Bantustan of local control, autogestion, community control, and divide and conquer. It will be a micro-state, a mini-state, a rump state, may quickly become a failed state. Independence is not on the table. That's a cruel hoax. And in particular, you're going to get the British pound controlled by the Bank of England. We've got Krugman usefully getting into the act this week saying that this is a recipe for disaster. The Bank of England is going to control your currency, and you call that independence? That's not independence. And you're going to have the Queen as the head of state. She can overthrow your governments, as she did in Australia in the 70s, and meddling as she did in Canada over recent years. That's absolutely unacceptable. Suppose you use the euro. You'll be subjected to the Merkel austerity machine at the European Central Bank. If you go with the pound, we've said it, you'll be under the control of Threadneedle Street. Suppose you have your own currency. That will go the way of the Icelandic crown, driven down to about 1/3 of its value, and your living standard driven down to the same level. This is a counterinsurgency ploy. Remember, what the British do, and in this case they're willing to do this in the flesh of the Scots, the British use their own country as a demonstration and advertising and shop window for the policy they want to push around the world, right? They want to have killer austerity, the end of Keynesianism. They put Thatcher in there, and off of Thatcher, you spin off then Reagan and that entire trail of tears here in the United States. What they're signaling now is break up the modern nation state. And you know, here, we go back to 1310, we go back to Gian Galeazzo Visconti and Dante Alighieri meeting in Milan, the foundation of the Visconti Milan state. That is the prototype of the modern state. Gian Galeazzo Visconti up until about 1399 or so. That's where it all comes from. Then Louis XI of France, Henry VII, Earl of Richmond, and then the people who followed along with that. If this Scottish referendum goes through, you will see a world orgy of secessionism. There will be not just the Catalonians, not just the Venetians, but every crackpot relic. You're going to see the Night of the Living Dead, these Nation Foutue. The Nation Foutue are going to come out of the woodwork, and they're all going to demand national self-determination, right down to the last Saustall, right? The local pigsty will declare independence and demand its independence. So this is simply a fraud, and I want to commend George Galloway and his yeoman service. I am very favorably impressed by Galloway. He's a Scot. He's got working class creds. He's been up there bashing these petty bourgeois characters who are trying to sell this. He says if you have Scotland under the Scottish National Party, it'll be based on grudge and it'll be churlish. And what grudge means, you look at Ukraine, their hatred of Russia, that's grudge. You look at Polish politics, grudge, hate Russia. The Baltics, same story, a grudge, they hate Russia. This character, Salmond, I think is an unprincipled demagogue, the head of the Scottish National Party. Those are the oligarchs of Scotland, right? The working guys vote for the Labour Party. Obviously they're duped, but certainly the Scottish National Party. This is no bargain. So what they're pushing, I'm comparing it to the pork chop nationalists, right here back in the 60s and 70s. You had your pork chop cultural nationalists. I would call these guys the haggis cultural nationalists. So they're going to have a Bantustan, and they'll have some, you know, you can do your local policies, but nothing of any importance. Rosa Luxemburg had strictures about the independence of Poland. What she said was, It's going to be more progressive if you keep it together. The general rule of politics is that the smaller the unit, the easier it is for oligarchs to control it. It's why states' rights is the most reactionary slogan in American politics, because whereas in Washington, huge interests clash and a certain margin of maneuver develops for the average person, if it's a state, then an oligarch or congeries of oligarchs, they can easily control a state. So this is why the world policy of the CIA is to break up existing states, microstates, mini-states, partition studies. You know my litany. That includes Sudan carved, Iraq carved, Yugoslavia carved, then Serbia carved, Kosovo, and of course they have a 5-way division and the Bernard Lewis plan ready for Iran. They have a 4-way division ready for Pakistan. I deplore the fact that Russia today thinks they have to get on the side of secessionists. It's ridiculous. Galloway provides a very good antidote. So vote no, and we'll see you next week. Calling on the people.